you are, before we get started, if you are from a state that you don't see listed on the chat there, if you would put your state in, we're up to 19 states right now. We'd enjoy that. And we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to talk at you a minute or two or 10. And then at the end, we'll take question and answer. And as I'm speaking, if you have questions that you want to record on the right in the chat room, go right ahead. And then we will look at those as we go through them. And first of all, as we get started, I want to thank you all for your heart for human trafficking, which is why you're even on tonight. Either you've been to the movie or you're thinking of going to the movie Sound of Freedom, and you were impacted by it, or you care about this subject. And I just wish that our survivors could see your faces right now, because they would be crying, because they are always amazed and blown away by the fact that people care about their horror and their abuse and their plight. And some of you spoke to the fact that you cried through the movie.
Yeah.
Your tears are precious. They're sacred, and they speak more than 10,000 words. So thank you for that. So what I want to do to get started is I want to make two completely separate categories. I want to separate the movie from the man and the organization that it's about. And I'll tell you why I think it's important to separate those, because one of them is very controversial, and the other one, the movie itself is a true story, and it's probably one of the best examples I've seen of the horror that children go through. The children in it are probably the best actors. And Anita, maybe you need to mute your mic, please. Anita, if you can go to mute and mute your mic, please.
Yes, I will.
Linda, and maybe anybody else whose mic is not muted, if you could mute it until the question and answer time, that would help us, because we're hearing all the background noise. Awesome. All right, well, so we're going to separate the movie from the man, Tim Ballard, and the OUR, Operation Underground Railroad Organization. We'll talk about both of them, but we're going to start with the movie first. And it's important that we separate them. We were asked for input on the movie itself. And so a local nonprofit did the marketing and all that to get almost 400 people to the movie theater Friday night, the week of 4th of July. And it's the fourth Hollywood movie that on human trafficking that we have done a showing of. We did the Taken movie, and none of us have CIA dads, but we talked about the 4 takeaways of that movie. We did Trade of Innocence and Sold, which were international stories, and the book Sold that the movie was based on is for sale on our website, and it's actually a book written for preteens. So it's a book that you as an adult could read in an hour, but it's written to young kids, and it's a story, it's a novel sort of a story of a girl in India, but it gives parents a tool to have their kids read and then have a conversation, because these conversations are complicated, they're hard. If you just sit down with your kids after going to Sound of Freedom and say, tonight we're going to discuss human and sex trafficking, they'll look at you like you're crazy. So having these tools, having these events to prompt the conversation are helpful. We did Caged No More, and it showed some important aspects. And so someone has their thing on because I'm echoing, but Sound of Freedom. So it's a true story. Everything in it is true. about law enforcement dealing with trafficking of kids. Like any true story, it represents a real look at trafficking. But like any true story, no two are alike. So if I told you 100 stories or 1,000 stories, there would be 100 or 1,000 differences. Some things in common, of course. So the problem with a story is you tend to go away thinking that applies to every story, and that isn't the case. Deb, I'm going to ask you to mute your phone if you can.
The pools were significantly unpleasant. Yeah.
Deb, can you mute your phone?
Like I would probably were in the upper pool.
Thank you. When we showed it, we did 3 things. Number one, like I said earlier, I went to the movie on a Monday night, so I would know what I was talking about on Friday night. And it was a good thing that I did, because I decided that we needed to have counselors there and give a warning. So we gave a warning. It's graphic, but it's not gross. But it is graphic. So it's intense and it's a little hard to take. Because I had gone on Monday night, I squirmed Monday night. I didn't know if Hollywood would stop. I didn't know where they would draw the line. So seeing it the second time was easier, because I was like, okay, you know, because first time I was like, oh dear, don't go any further, don't go any further, right? Like I said, it was graphic, but not gross. And so we had a counselor there who, and I told people, if you need to get up and leave, you will not offend anybody. Please feel free, because I knew that in a room that size with 300-400 people, there would be sexual abuse victims, if not trafficking, but at least abuse victims, and that it could trigger that. And then the third thing we did is we had a Q&A at the end, a question and answer time, where we discussed some of the myths that you could accidentally leave that movie and think were true. And so I'm going to give you my opinion as a person who's done a lot of anti-trafficking and walked hand in hand with victims and survivors and been involved in rescues for decades. And there are 2 takeaways. One of them is positive and one of them is a cautionary note. So let's talk about the positive first. Number one, it had the number 1 trafficker was a woman. That's important, because 60% of traffickers are females. And we tend to think that men are the traffickers. Yes, they're the buyers, but 60% of the people doing the force, coercion, and fraud are female. And so the beauty queen, the Colombian beauty queen who, you know, was scamming and luring these kids, that's very true to the statistics. Cool girls at school recruiting your 9 to 12-year-old to go to a party they can't drive themselves home from. When we do our 8-hour training day, we have them on the screen saying, I need my stuff, so I'm going to recruit your prissy 9-year-old. And so that was one positive thing that, I mean, it's not a good thing, but it showed something that was very factual and accurate, instead of just always showing all men. The worst stitches and beatings that I've had to deal with was a woman beating a woman for 7 hours. Secondly, it was a brother and a sister. So boys were also portrayed in there as being trafficked. And while girls are by far trafficked more, there are 5 trends that WAR has identified. And one of them is that boys are on the increase in alarming numbers in all over the world, but especially in the United States of America. And so that is it was good that it showed both boys and girls, because that's true to form. We can tend to think that our boys aren't in trouble or couldn't be in trouble, and that's not true. It showed grooming. So it showed how the kids were taught to be photographed and how they were taught to stand and look and what they did with their hair and all of those little subtle things that they did to turn them into kind of a sexy pose, if you will. It showed how the little boy was manipulated through his hunger with bread. That was grooming. You do for me something, I'll give you bread, and manipulating. It showed branding, the crown that you saw on the back of the neck. We have a pro bono tattoo artist who removes tattoos that women or children are branded with tattoos. We have a video on our media site, P4WB, Pray for War Babies, and it shows branding there of a baby in Florida by the trafficker that was taking that child. And so that branding is something we got a picture one time on our 911 response team of a girl who had her hair up in a ponytail, and on the back of her neck she had a barcode where they scan them in and scan them out like a piece of meat. And we were able to send that to Homeland Security. She was in a doctor's office, and so they literally went right over to that doctor's office and intervened in that situation. We had a woman who had so much tattooed on her back, it took the tattoo artist a year to remove it and cover it up. Every time she broke a rule, the trafficker branded and tattooed on her back that rule. And so it showed branding, it showed the job lure, the modeling job, which is how this all started, right? One of the 22 lures that we talk about. It referred to chickens. Remember when the creeps were sitting there talking about the island that they were going to create that would be a brothel, and they said they needed 50 chicks? Well, this is a term that is used in the sex slavery world, of the sex entertainment world, chicks. So there's a village in Cambodia called the Chicken Farm to mock the fact that you can pluck a chick. It's all kids for sale. So that is a term that is used in the industry. It showed child porn, which is really important because there is a link between pornography and trafficking, and it's hard to prove. And so it's somewhat controversial, but as time goes by, we're seeing more and more research being done on the link there. And the reality is, in fact, when I asked Homeland Security one time, what is the one thing you want me to communicate to people? She said, tell people that pornography is not cartoons. These are real people. So the guy who they scam into revealing, the guy that's watching kid porn, if you remember that, he's buying kid porn. And that sentence in there where it says that most of the buyers are American, we talked a little bit about that while we were waiting to start. And I would say that when it comes to pornography, that might be the case because wealthy nations have more money and you have to buy porn. One of the big rings that was all boys was that the more pain they showed, the more money you got for that pornography. And so child porn, the good news about child porn is this. As a nation, we have really good, well-developed laws about child pornography. And so anybody that does child porn is an idiot because it leaves a digital fingerprint. Even after they erase it, you can find it in that computer. And we have often just gotten rid of the trafficking charge because our laws aren't really great yet for that. When there's child porn, it's slam dunk. And so we'll just apply that prosecution and consequences because child porn is well defined as a law and consequences. And so I remember when Homeland came into War's Life many years ago, and in those days, they had 3 people that were coming 3 times a week to Grand Rapids. We have a full-time team here now. But the lady told me that there is a team of men and women who sit in a room in Detroit where there's no windows, and their job, our tax dollars, pay them to sit there and look at missing children's pictures and child porn and try and match them. And sometimes those kids will have a paper bag over their head because the person who's taken them and has them knows that they're being looked for. And so when I went to Detroit one time, I took cookies to those people. Imagine having that job and having to sit there and study that. So that message comes across because it's a story about law enforcement. And so you see that child porn piece of the story in there. At the end of the day, I want everybody to throw all the mud at the wall and hope that something will stick. I'm going to move into some of the cautionary tales, but before I do, I don't want this to come across like, I don't like it when nonprofits criticize other nonprofits, especially in the anti-trafficking realm, because this is a 1,000-piece puzzle and it takes everybody's efforts. So just because somebody doesn't do it the way we do it, or the way we prefer, or perfectly trauma informed, etc., doesn't mean that there isn't some good in it. But I'm just very careful when I am critical or point out what I'm calling cautionary note about another nonprofit or a movie, which is an effort in a powerful one toward anti-trafficking. You will leave that movie devastated. If you don't, something's wrong with you. If you do leave devastated, you're normal. And that means that your heart breaks for what it should break for. Now, I just, like I said, I welcome every attempt to get a horrific message out. But while this story is true, it promoted and pushed some myths. And a myth is something that people think is true and it's not. And so let's look at those. Number 1, it promoted only international. Yes, international trafficking, women at risk international. Yes, we know that. We're very aware of that. But if you leave that theater thinking that, okay, well, this is America, so I guess we're okay. No, you're not. And 300,000 American minors, your daughter, my granddaughter with constitutional rights are at risk. That doesn't even count pre-COVID, 17,500 foreigners that are brought here, according to the FBI. 300,000 American children already here, born here, raised here, your daughter, son, 300,000 a year, according to the government, minors that are at risk. So there was actually a sentence in there where it said, because the first time I heard it on Monday night, I was like, what? I reacted. So I had a pen and pencil on Friday and I wrote it down word for word. And it said, it is highly probable that while buyers are American men, that's another discussion we can have, most likely they are not American children for sale. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. I wish that were true. I wish with all my heart and soul that it's true, but it's not. American children, 300,000 a year that we even know of, are at risk of human trafficking. A 13-year-old in Florida goes to a sleepover and sold on the internet. Shauna Newell, look it up, MSNBC, for $300,000 for her virginity. Recruited by a girl. We rescued a 3-week-old in Grand Rapids, Michigan, middle-class family a couple years ago. 2 12-year-olds under COVID. COVID's winding down. The mothers are back to work. They're doing school online. 1 in Muskegon, 1 in Ohio. think they're talking to 12-year-olds and invite them to the front yard. And in Muskegon, 3 men came, not a 12-year-old, and raped, videoed, and took that child. They are reunited today. But these are Americans. The parents in Ohio drove 2 cops, drove their daughter all the way to Grand Rapids to talk to me because she didn't believe them. Now, in her case, they caught it before that person came, but they still follow them around and sit in restaurants and try and get her eye, thinking, oh, well, you know, she'll come back to us. So since the movie, knowing I was going to do this tonight, I've been doing some of my homework so that I don't make statements that I can't back up. But the organization that the movie was about, the man who's was co-founder with an organization, they did a podcast on domestic trafficking, and they admitted that we have trafficking in America in that podcast. So even though there's that sentence in the movie by Jim Caviezel, they say in there very clearly in their podcast that there is trafficking of children in America. Now, what I learned is that the Operation Underground Railroad, which we'll call OUR from now on, OUR, pays, they don't do rescues in America. They pay for equipment for law enforcement. Very brilliant, frankly. Now, we're going to talk later about OUR, and Tim Ballard has left them, was asked to leave, etc. But let's just set that aside for a minute. What they do in America, I want to come back to that thought a minute because it feeds into some other myths here. The second myth that is spoken about, do you remember in the movie where there's like black and white scenes of kids being kidnapped? Any of you remember that? 3% of trafficking victims are kidnapped. Hello, 3%. And they had a white van in there, for Pete's sake. 95% of all trafficking victims think they know their trafficker. This is not kidnapping. Yes, stranger danger is important, but it implies to our children that if a person isn't a stranger, you can trust them. Number 1 trafficker is family. Number 2 trafficker is a fake boyfriend. And then you go on down, and you come to organized crime, etc. So kidnapping is a myth. And if you leave that movie theater and think, well, my kid's not going to get grabbed by a white van and you're okay, no, you're not. Because 95% of all victims think they know their trafficker. They've developed a relationship in the neighborhood, a boyfriend, online. You know, the internet is the reason I believe this is the fastest growing crime. And it's ubiquitous. You don't have to park your car at some nasty parking lot anymore. You can dial up a rate. You can dial up anything now. And so we're not going to get rid of our computers and our phones any more than we get rid of cars because people drive them drunk and kill people. So we have to teach our children that the internet is like a car. It can get you places and save your life, and it can kill you. It's a tool, and it's dangerous, and it's public territory. And so the idea that, you know, it's kidnapping, I just sat there stunned when I saw that. I'm like, stop it. You are making people have a false sense of security. Now, having said that, there are those times where the J.C. Drugard gets tasered at the bus stop going to school. I remember years ago that we got a 911 call from our partners in Chiang Mai, Thailand, where there was a mall that had a play area, you know, like you do in America with a tree that kids could climb. And this little girl, this mom with a little blonde, you know, girl in Thailand, her daughter disappeared. And they're like, I was sitting here looking at that tree and she disappeared. How could she disappear? She freaks out. They shut the whole mall down and they search for this child. Well, I don't know, a couple hours later, they're like, she was in the tree. So they go to the tree, and in the bottom floor of the tree where the kids play, there was a trap door. And lo and behold, there was like a ladder down to all of these like little cells below, and she was down there. So we need to be vigilant, but seriously, that is so unusual. And I just, so again, 3% is kidnapping, another myth. Another caution. Remember the guy who used to be something in organized crime, and he's kind of the guy that helps Caviezel find these kids. He's a bad guy that's turned good, or I don't know what. I mean, he's just a bad guy. He's the slimy guy that helps him set up this thing, this sting, right? You know which one I'm talking about? I don't know what his name was. You know who I'm talking about? He makes a comment in there because Caviezel says to him, why do you care? Why you used to be in with the mob and everything, and why do you care about this now? And he tells the story of buying a girl that he thought was like 25, and there's that moment where she's putting her shoes on and she looks up at him, and he says he stared into her eyes and he saw darkness and sorrow. And he said he realized he was the darkness. Remember that part? And he was like, now I buy kids and put them in a safe place. Big red flag. Back in the day, whoa, decades ago, when people first started seeing kids being sold, yes, they would line up and say, well, if you're going to pay 100, I'll pay 110. Nobody worth their salt buys kids. A, it's illegal. That makes you a trafficker. B, you'll go to jail. C, we don't break the law. But what happens when you do that is the reason it stopped very quickly was because if I go, oh, believe me, if I could have bought Sweetie, I would have bought her in a heartbeat. I would have put my house up and second mortgage or something. But if I do that, then when I show up, they're like, oh, there's that lady that buys kids. Quick, get some kids. Who can we sell today? So you create orphans. Nobody worth their salt does that. I was like, stop it. Stop talking like that. That's a terrible idea. First of all, it's illegal. You're going to go to jail. Trust me, if I could have bought Sweetie, I would have. If I could have kidnapped her, I would have. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do a police raid because her owner was a government official. Remember? So that whole idea of I'm going to buy them, no, that doesn't work that way. When we first started advertising what we were doing in 2006, when I actually incorporated women at risk, even though the programs are older than that, but I made it its own separate 501c3, people would say, can you buy kids? How much does it cost to buy a kid? And I would say, we don't buy kids, but it was still new back then. And some people were still kind of thinking that way. So that is really old school. It is not healthy. And it's one of the reasons that he has come under a lot of criticism, because people who know anything about this industry know that the minute you do that, you just create demand all over the place. So it's one of the criticisms that this has been leveled at this movie is that he created orphans. And when you talk about buying them, I would tend to agree with that. I don't know that a sting creates orphans, but they did say we need 50 kids, 50 kids, 50 kids, in a hurry kind of thing. And so that is one of the criticisms that's been leveled at it. It's just a minute, let me see here. All right. Probably my biggest, Well, my biggest frustration was that they made it look international. Probably my second biggest frustration with the movie and my caution is you can't do stings in America the way they do it overseas. IJM, International Justice Mission, is another large anti-trafficking organization of lawyers and police and that type of people who go in foreign places and do stings and collect data so that they can prosecute. And overseas, when you march in as an American, you get away with stuff. Now you get kicked out of the country. IJM got kicked out of Thailand because it made the Thai government look bad. So they backed up and they started doing papers like legal documents and stuff, which was way more important because when you're born in a remote village and you don't even have a birth certificate, you can disappear and you don't exist, right? And so they moved back toward the preventative side of it. But you can't do what he is promoting in America. It's vigilantism. If Nathan Hager and my husband and I go rushing into some red light district somewhere to rescue somebody, we are obstructing justice. You can't do that in America. Now, yes, foreign organizations do that, but only overseas. When I first founded Women at Risk, men would line up with their gun and say, Becky, I'll help you, I'll shoot someone. And it doesn't work that way here. The minute you do that, you're in trouble here, right? And so it creates this false sense of activism that is not the way we operate. However, in my homework on our Operation Underground Railroad, I discovered that one of the criticisms is they've literally raised like tens of millions of dollars. And one of the things they do is they buy police equipment and they donate it. That is brilliant, frankly. Ever since Defund the Police went off, when a police department needs this high-tech ability to find the child porn and find this and find these predators, blah, 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 they can't afford this equipment. Now, overseas, this is so important. We do this. We try and curry favor in legitimate legal ways with law enforcement. So we will get to know Power Elite or the mayor or whatever, because when you serve them in some way, they're more likely to help you in some legitimate way. I'm not talking about quid pro quo. I'm just talking about, what I understood from is that they literally donate from their multi-millions security equipment. So they gave an example where something cost $22,000. So they said to the police department, we'll give you 10 if you can come up with 12. And so they got this really good equipment to do these things. And like I said, child porn is a slam dunk compared to trafficking. And so with this equipment, they could do that. And so that is a very creative, legitimate way. And I can imagine then that they would pull you in for consultation, right? So I'm trying to make it balanced here. It doesn't take away from the fact that they were under investigation for misuse of funds and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Right now, it's so messy and so many people are attacking everything that I cut it in half at least. Even still, you do the research for yourself, you figure it out. But that piece of it makes sense to me, why you would help the cops in this country. Over there, they're buying that stuff and doing it themselves. But here, they're doing that for our local police. Now, having said all of that, I often speak about police raids. It is our least favorite rescue method. I get it. There may be a time, in Thailand one time, one of our women was recaptured by her trafficker, which is really unusual. And he had her chained to a bed. And we had to go to the one policeman who we finally found, who would help us. Because overseas, I taught my children to be afraid of the police and nice to strangers. Then I brought them to America and I'm like, now, be afraid of strangers and run to the nice policeman or woman. Not that there aren't bad cops. There's bad moms. There's bad boyfriends. There's bad dads. There's bad pastors and priests. There's bad coaches. There's bad everything. But for the most part, run to the good policeman or woman. But when you get 32 women in a police raid, 11 of them are children, true story. They don't know you. You haven't built a relationship with them. The attrition from police raids is huge. They're not stupid. They're a survivor or they'd be dead. They have a brain in their head. They're going to run away the first chance they should get, and they should because they don't know you. So we don't like getting women and children in a police raid. The trauma in that, the lack of trauma-informed rescue and care is just like off the charts. There's nothing, yes, I get it. Sometimes that's all you can do. I'm not saying that there isn't a place for that, but seriously, our preferred method of outreach is to go into the red light districts and build relationships. We're job hunters. If you ever want to make a living in a different way, call the number on the back of this card. And then they run to us, and the attrition from that is way lower than when you get someone in a police raid. They don't know you, they don't trust you, and they shouldn't. Plus, when you build a relationship with somebody, you create the platform to share later of a relationship that's meaningful. And so, again, I mean, there's a place for the police raid, don't get me wrong, but it's our least favorite method. The trauma, the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, all of those natural responses to that are just really seriously important and big. Our passion is to leave a legacy of safe places. And if you go on our website and you go to the media section, there is a half-hour interview with a woman from Homeland Security who I called about this whole movie and everything to get her input, especially because of the controversy right now that's swirling around Tim Ballard and the Operation Underground Railroad. And it's an incredible interview, not me, her. And she talks in there about what she wishes families knew. And it's so enlightening and such interesting insight that I really recommend it. When she came into my life, they were looking for a 6-month-old pay-per-view live feed. We're all adults here, it looks like, anal rape of a 6-month-old in Pensacola, Florida. And you know, that's when we started the civilian first responder training with the 15 demographics, 15 things that draw the eye of a trafficker to a community. Grand Rapids has 12 of them. Holland has 13 of them. I just did research on Chicago. They have 14 of them because I'm going to be speaking there next weekend. And so we tailor it to each place. When I was at Pentagon and Quantico, when I was in Germany, military bases or Fortune 500 companies, wherever I am, I'm tailoring it to their industry. And by the way, the next one in West Michigan is January 13th. It's a Saturday. It's the day after the International Anti-Trafficking Day. And it's that 8-hour day where we talk about the 15 demographics, 22 laws, the 21 signs. We bring in law enforcement and survivors. And the last session, we have a panel where you ask questions about throughout the day. All right, now I want to talk real quickly, and then we'll go to question and answer about Tim Ballard real quickly, because I've been doing some homework on this. And the Tim Ballard is who the movie Sound of Freedom is about. He's a Mormon, a father of 9, and he is a co-founder of Our. The movie was made 5 years ago by Disney. They decided they would never show it. Angel Studios bought it from Disney, and tried to take it to other groups like Netflix and that, and nobody would do it. And so they went into overdrive and did it on their own. Ballard has received criticism about how much money he's amassed, but my research showed, and that's a separate issue, but my research showed that no money from the movie went to Ballard. He got no royalties. He's raised a lot, multi-millions, I think 40 million or something now they have in their coffers from donors, but none of that came from the movie. Today, I get a report from an organization called Ministry Watch, and they report on different ministries, good and bad. And they noted today that Ballard has left Operation Underground Railroad. He was asked to leave, and he went to the Nazarene Fund, which he also left. And he has started something called the Spear Fund, and it's quite vague on their website. And of course, he gets criticized for that too. It's based in Utah, and there was an investigation which closed. There's now a new investigation inside from employees, and I'm not even going to go into detail because it's just messy, and you judge for yourself. I'm not going to go there. But they were what was dropped, which I will talk about, was witness tampering and fraud. And one man was falsely accused of trafficking, and they had to pay him $100,000 or something. You know, I was doing homework on IJM at the same time. When a nonprofit does law enforcement work, you run into these problems. We know in law enforcement, there are times when people get pulled in the net that don't belong there. So IJM got criticized, obviously rightly so, for pulling a mother in Ghana who went to jail for 5 years, and then they realized she wasn't a trafficker. They dropped the charges, they let her out, they let her have her kids back. Those kind of things happen in law enforcement. I'm not defending them. I'm just saying, when it happens in the nonprofit world, I'm like, welcome to the nonprofit world, Tim Ballard. You know, you can't make mistakes like that, right? Whoa, the PR, the integrity and all. Integrity is your scalpel. You're a surgeon without a scalpel. You're, a carpenter without a hammer. And in ministry, if you don't have integrity, if people doubt your integrity, you're in trouble. And so I'm not saying it's okay that they make mistakes. I'm just saying mistakes happen. I don't see that as, yeah, they're doing law enforcement's job. And we know there are people in jail who shouldn't be, unfortunately. And sometimes it's not about the facts, it's about who has a better lawyer. And so I just throw that out there because I'm not going to defend him on his money. I'm not going to defend him on some of this other stuff. But when it comes to somebody who's falsely accused, that's what happens when you're law enforcement and you have the power to incarcerate people. And both IJM, which I respect, and their lawyers mostly, and have had that accusation hurled at them. So those are just some things, some of the criticisms of that. And I also printed out I also called Homeland Security, Amy, who you see in that interview, and asked her, she met Ballard, and she said that the movie story is accurate. It's a true story. I knew that, we know that, but it was good for me to hear her say that. She said, and somebody sent me a very interesting, Pam, note about how the Department of Justice, and I asked Amy what she thought of this, the Department of Justice took off their website all kinds of information that they had posted there for families on how to protect their children from online predators. Suddenly, quietly, it's all gone, just gone. And I asked her, why? Do you have any insight as to why DOJ would take that all down? And she said, I cannot respond to why DOJ would take stats down. I've also seen the emails and heard the talk, and I know federal agencies fluctuate with top priorities. I just wonder if the FBI has adjusted their top 5 priorities or something. I have no idea, not working for that agency. The movie is not a fake. The operation he did in Colombia that's in the movie was a Homeland Security op. The SAC special agent in charge is the top boss in Detroit, was the assistant attaché in Colombia when the operation, so she knows him because he's in Detroit, and she was a major part of it. Her name is Angie Salazar. There's absolutely enough demand for trafficking to be still the forefront of their attention. And so I was interviewed. So the movie was on Friday. On Monday, I was interviewed by Channel 13 here in Grand Rapids, because some of you local people might remember or know that it just so happened that on Monday, the custodian at the public high school in Holland was arrested for being part of a human trafficking ring. So I was interviewed along with some others, and when we first met, the man doing the interview said, and I watched it on CNN, there's controversy, there's criticism that this is a QAnon conspiracy and that none of it's true. And I hadn't done my homework yet, but I just said, man, I wish that were true. Tell that to the survivors in Homeland Security and I, when we rescue women, that it's not true. I said, I wish it was fake news. Now, I have since read that Jim Caviezel, not Tim Ballard, brought up the QAnon, and Tim Ballard said, we have nothing to do with QAnon. If you don't know what QAnon is, then we can talk about that. But our separated itself, Operation Underground Railroad separated itself from QAnon. And so there's that. Then Tim Ballard is gone from 2 nonprofits. It talks a lot about it. If you want to go to Ministry Watch, it's ministrywatch.com, and they report on ministries. And then there's the story about the West African children with IJM, that the mother was put in jail and she shouldn't have been, and blah, blah, blah. So those are some actual articles on the subject. And now I'm going to pause a minute, and we're just going to take some question and answers, and I'm going to go to the top of these links here, these chats, and start with the first question. Okay, wouldn't what be a good use for AI? Child porn research, I'm assuming?
That was my question. Yeah, that was my question. You were talking about those poor individuals who are stuck in the windowless rooms in Detroit looking at genitalia of toddlers and trying to match it to, porn.
Yeah, I don't know that they're looking at genitalia. They're probably looking at
that's
their faces.
Encouraging.
Yeah, their faces, they don't have that picture. They have, the pictures that you see on the water bottles or the milk bottles used to be, of the missing and exploited children, and they're looking for that face.
Okay.
And that's why they cover their head with a paper bag sometime. But they're trying.
That was
to
my
match
question.
faces.
I'm sure I'm not the first person to think of this, but given the facial recognition technology and the capabilities, just in simple,
they can even age
algorithm,
them, right? They can even put it in a program that ages them, and that would be a way better use of AI than some of the other crazy things that we're coming up with. But
like cheating on English papers, sure.
Well, and maybe that's part of it. I know that some of this technology that Our was buying the police was highly sophisticated and stuff that, local police departments wouldn't normally have. But yeah, that would be great. Pablo was the name of the creepy man. Thank you. I remember you saying something about Sweetie, how you couldn't buy her to get her out. No, I would have bought her in a heartbeat if I could have. can you provide the link to the interview? Yes. And they, Amy, bless you, did that. And the 2 videos are toward the bottom. That interview was linked in the email you all received. Oh, today's Zoom. Didn't know that.
The interview you did last week or a couple weeks ago, about that,
Oh,
teacher
the
here. Yeah,
channel
that
13.
interview was channel 13.
Okay.
Yeah, that was
Yes.
linked into the video.
Okay.
Today.
According to the articles, Tim Ballard was asked to leave because of, it sounds like indiscretions, but I think I would like you to do your own research on that. I feel like it's easy to throw mud at this man right now. Some of the mud is, I don't know. It was leveled at him by employees. And I saw on the ministry watch site, which I didn't appreciate, that they were asking if you are an employee or have been, would you write us? And I thought, oh my word. You know, you're going to get a disgruntled employee who says whatever, but at first they're not, so our isn't denying, they're not saying why he left, or he apparently wrote somebody and talked to donors and said that he was asked to leave. But you can do the research, it's all out there now, and you can draw your own conclusion. I just feel like, all right, now it's turning into a witch hunt. And everybody's throwing everything under the sun at this man. And I'm not going to judge that. I'll leave that up to you. Ashton Kutcher helped develop, yes, some software used to find trafficking people 6 years ago. I don't know a whole lot about that, but there are definitely software programs in process. I know at one time when we were I was speaking at a CFR in either Pennsylvania or New York, a Customs and Border Patrol person came and asked for a private meeting with me and an assistant, and was creating a software that would help do the same thing at the borders. With the additional attention brought to the human trafficking trade, what are your concerns, if any, do you have for current victims? Are the traffickers feeling pressured? Can that desperation make it even more dangerous? And how can we best help? So one of the things about the movie is it's law enforcement. And when you pick people up in a police raid, like in that show, it's not trauma informed. They're not doing it in a way that is, hey, if I'm in trouble, hang me upside down. I don't care. Get me out of there. I'm not saying that you have to provide a pillow on my way out, right? But there are other methods that are used, like outreach. Now, for sure, once they get them into aftercare, there should be trauma-informed aftercare, and I'm going to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, whether they deserve it or not, and say that they're using trauma-informed aftercare specialists. Even if you're ever in trouble, any one of you or anybody you love, ask for a victim's rights advocate. Ask for that. If you're at a police station and you're with somebody who was abused in some way, ask for a victim's rights advocate. They are trained to ask questions in a way that doesn't further traumatize you. So when we did that, we have done 2 Zooms now, Light Up Your World Zooms on forensic interviewing, how to ask questions in a way that don't further traumatize the victim, because cops don't do that. They're not trained. Parents don't do that. Frankly, parents need to be taught that. We immediately go to the, why did you do this? Why, implying that they had agency, So yes, I think that what happens is trafficking gets driven underground, but it also gets exposed. And once your eyes are open, I promise you from decades of doing this, it's the luxury of hindsight, that when you train people You train professionals like medical professionals, parents, cops, who have that eye toward diagnosing things, right? You just see the light bulb go on in the room. And I've had people come up to me like, oh, well, I'll give you an example. Recently, a few months ago, we had one of our pro bono lawyers go and do a talk, a forensic interview talk. And while she was speaking, there was a law enforcement person sitting in the room who all of a sudden realized she's describing what I just saw in court this morning. And she made a phone call to the judge, and that girl was rescued from her trafficker in the courtroom with her that day. The light bulb went on. And so I think that the eye cannot see what the brain is not looking for. So once you know what to look for and you know how to respond, you're going to do better at that whole rescue problem. Of course, traffickers are going to up the ante, but they do anyway. I don't know how it can get a whole lot worse.
Oh, crap.
And sometimes people are afraid to intervene because they're afraid that they will bring down more. If you go to the door of a domestic violence situation, right? And you talk to the husband, and then he'll go back in the house and he'll be like, all right, wife, why didn't you tell somebody, right? And then she gets beaten again. Yes, that can happen in trafficking too. But any traffic victim will tell you, go ahead, because they need help. And so they're used to those beatings. Doesn't make them easy. I'm not saying it does. I'm just saying they want help, and they will take one more beating in order to find help. Plus, it sends the message that what's being done to you is wrong. Doesn't mean that everything you do is going to come work out hunky-dory. It might create more trouble. You do the right thing regardless of the consequences. Sweetie, updates have stopped coming. Oh, well, I just gave one recently. I think it's a letter that's going out in November, actually. Once I write it, it's in my head, and I think it's in either this next October letter or November letter. But Sweetie is 12 now, and she is super bright. And not everybody should go to college, but I think she should. She's really bored in school. We're looking at where we can send her, where it will be more enriching. She also is very good at Indian classical dance, which is kind of like our ballet. And she just needs intellectual and creative outlets. And so there's a letter going out, if it hasn't already, I think it goes out next month, talking about the fact that I knew this day was coming. I just was putting it off, but I will see her in February and March. And we're looking at where we can send her to school. So we'll be raising funds for educational needs for her. And her little foster sibling is the one that went to culinary school for a 5-star hotel and is in that program now and doing really well. And so yes, she is safe, but every day is a victory and every day is a risk. Her mother could take her. And so we've got to get her to 18. That's 6 more years. So trauma-informed interview with Amy Allen. Yep, there's a link there. The lady that was in charge of gathering these children for the modeling jobs. Is it very high job? Is it very highly likely they were abused as a child and is stuck into this ring of trafficking and feels this is all she can do? So you're asking if the Miss Columbia, who's the trafficker, was abused as a child, is what I'm gathering. Statistically, I can't answer you about her. I mean, she's a real person and that's a real story. And so we could probably look her up and there might be information on that online somewhere. I don't know her story personally, so I can't answer about her. But statistically, 75, I think, or 72% of people who get trafficked have child abuse in their past. So if you don't have child abuse in your past, doesn't mean you're not going to get trafficked, but child abuse is easier for the predator to groom because somebody's already done that, right? And already driven that dagger into the self-esteem in the heart of a child, thinking that this is what makes them valuable, way before their time and way before they should even understand sexuality. So I would say probably in a lot of cases, I know that when somebody ends up in trafficking, the sooner we get them out, the faster they heal. The longer they're in there, the more layer upon layer upon layer of abuse. And it becomes complex trauma rather than simple trauma. So child abuse sets kids up for all kinds of nonsense. And yes, it can be a precursor to a vulnerability. Traffickers are masterful at creating vulnerabilities. And when you listen to that interview with Amy Allen, you will see how they create and measure vulnerability. It's brilliant and disgusting and just amazing. I mean, it's really eye-opening. But they can create vulnerabilities if they aren't there. But they look for low-hanging fruit. They're going to pick the most vulnerable person first because they're cowards. They're bullies, and bullies are cowards, and they go for the easy-hanging fruit. So using the red light districts overseas to build relationships, how does that translate here in the US where we don't have? Well, we do have red light districts. I've been in them here. They're here. I mean, I've been in them in Grand Rapids where we've rescued women out of them. And then once I've rescued one or two, I'm like, you know what? I don't have to go back there. You know who's there and in trouble. You make a phone call. And then they call their friends because they know who needs out. But we do outreach here. And then we have a 911 line and we get calls on that. So the day that COVID hit, the lady that called that I was hiding in my car, that came through a phone call. She actually called the government Polaris number and they argued with her and told her she wasn't trafficked. And she said, I am, and if you don't help me, I'll be dead. And they said, oh, you're suicidal. And they gave her the national suicide hotline that gave her our number. Didn't know they had our number, but that's how she came into our life. And today she is a legal secretary and reunited with her kids. And we had a pizza party in my office, you know, first a year, and she's flourishing. And so, yes, we do outreach as well here. So Sarah, you're taking 8 teens to see the movie tomorrow. Good. And we had a bunch of teens from Ada Bible Church in the office the other day, and I just stopped in and talked to them for a minute. And the one comment that made my day was this girl was like, I never knew it was 3%. I thought they all got kidnapped. And I thought, good girl, 15-year-old, 14-year-old girl, you know, she thinks she's fine because she's not being kidnapped. No. And so that was the statistic of all the things I said that stuck in her head, and she was just blown away by that. So yes, so I would sit with them and talk to them afterwards. I would process with them. They can listen to this video, I guess, because Amy's taping it. My concern is that young people that go to a movie like that are going to think, A, it's not in America. Yes, it is. B, it's not me. Yes, it is. C, it's only minorities. No, it's not. D, it's kidnapping. No, it's somebody you think you know. E, it's girls, cool girls at school recruiting girls to go to parties, and they think it's a compliment. And, you know, there's stuff going on at the party and they manipulate them. It's a good thing that this movie came out. It's not perfect. Nothing is. No, and no story is. And Tim's story was an international story. So that's why it wasn't US kids at the center of the movie. I just objected to that one sentence where they said, probably not American kids. And I'm like, I wish. They could have added US stats at the end, but they did bring a lot of awareness. And like I say, I want to throw all the mud at the wall. I'm thankful for that movie because it made people mad. And they left there with it's a profound example of how traumatic it is for children. It's probably the best movie on that subject because it's never been children, little kids before. You know, Taken was, you know, what, a 19-year-old, and Cage No More was a teenager. And these are little kids. These are prepubescent kids, which technically pedophiles are. The legal term for pedophile is not somebody who buys a minor, it's somebody who buys a child, prepubescent. And this movie showed that. It showed that they were targeting little kids. I don't remember how little those kids were. Were they 8 and 10 or 10 and 12? Does anybody remember the ages? I don't even know if they told us their age. But Teresa Flores was trafficked from her home, and she is our September Light Up Your World guest. Yes, she needed a ride home from school. That's how it all started. And a kid from church, kid from Mass that she knew and thought would be safe. You know, her guard was out. Somebody she knew. It's advised to sit still after the movie. Oh, yes, this is a good point. Thank you. Jim Caviezel's message, you have to watch the credits roll. And after the credits roll, then Jim comes back up and he talks. And it's like maybe 5 minutes, but it's really well done. And he speaks to making the movie and who the real heroes are in the movie. Yes, you know, if you're like me, the first time I went to it, I didn't know to wait. I got up when the credits rolled and got out of there. So I hadn't seen that the first time. The stats at the end of the movie indicated that US was the #1 client. Yes, buyers. They said that in that sentence, that men are the buyers in America. And in the top 3 for clients, was that an interview of Tim and Jim? The top, depends on which study you look at, but the top 3 trafficking countries are Japan, Australia, United States. Destination countries are Japan, Australia, United States. And it just depends on what study you look at, but we're way up there as far as buyers. And so yes, okay, ages 4 and 8 or 4 and 7. They said they were 6 to 8. Red light districts in America are like strip clubs, gentlemen's clubs where there ain't no gentlemen. You know, the track where women may stand outside and sell themselves because they've been beaten down, and if they don't, they get their ribs broken. Las Vegas, that's the traditional way we look at it, but most trafficking happens from family. So most of the women we've rescued have been sold at home, sold from their bedrooms, sold from maybe a pop-up camper in the backyard to hunters, Michigan, true story, by their moms, by their boyfriends. Granville, if you remember here in Granville a few years ago at the Granville prom, a boyfriend had his girlfriend on her knees doing oral sex and taking money, and he was arrested for trafficking. So it doesn't always look like a red light district. By the time a woman's there, so we had a girl whose mother was selling her from her bedroom. She ran away to strip, thinking, well, this is safer than being sold for sex because there's no sex, no touching allowed in strip clubs. Well, guess what? First time she was raped in a strip club, left curled up in a fetal position with $1,000 thrown at her. The girls came in and said, honey, you want to make a living here, you got to put up with this. And here's the day after pill. And here's some morphine or heroin or something, you know, to dull the pain. So red light districts in America do exist. In fact, I just did a study in Chicago. I will quickly pull up real quickly. There is one website that the FBI taught me to go through. One of many that talks about massage parlors that are actually brothels. Now, this will not be American citizens, probably. It will be Chinese, Asian, ethnic, maybe Hispanic. I mean, they tell you exactly, it's disgusting. You know what Uber is, where when you take a ride in a taxi and you rate the driver, right? This is like that for brothels. And in the United States of America, so in Michigan, today, as of today, we have 368 brothels. And in California, they have 9,154, Connecticut 314, Florida 1,974. Let's see, we have Texas on tonight, 2,985 in Texas. Kentucky we have on tonight. Kentucky has 150, South Dakota has 29, South Carolina has 275. So if I go to Grand Rapids, if I go to Michigan and I click on Michigan and I go down here to Kalamazoo has 8, Holland has 5, Granville has 1, Grand Rapids has 40. That's up from 2 days ago. Oh, I don't know what else you want in Grand Rapids. Rochester Hills has 5, Novi has 11, Troy has 16, Westland has 10, on and on it goes. So that's a red light district, right? So they rate what you can buy and who's selling what, and what the cost is. That is mostly foreign women here. So Homeland Security tried to do a sting here in Grand Rapids. They went in with their guns and badges and nobody would tell them anything. And they said to me in Colorado, Denver, why, FBI person told me, why will they tell you and they won't tell us? I said, because you have a gun and a badge. I go in and get a massage only because I'm like, or I go in with the staff member and pay for the massage and say, I'm going to sit at your head and I'm going to talk to this girl while you're getting a massage. You want a free massage? I need to talk to this girl because I have reason to believe this place is in trouble. So I'm building a relationship with them and I'm saying, I'm not going to say anything to anybody, and I won't. But because they here, if it's international, they either have had their papers taken away from them, they may be illegal, or they may be legal, but they know that what's being done to them is illegal. And so they're not going to tell you. And they're just going to be like, well, there's 13-year-olds in that room and those are our kids, they're doing homework, get out of here. Well, they're 13-year-olds for sale, but when you come in with a gun and a badge, they're not going to tell you that. So, yes, that's a website for anybody to look at. And there are many, many, many of them. And there's even more of them on the dark web. I mean, there's thousands of them. So massage parlors that are not massage parlors, or nail salons, or that kind of thing. But again, that's foreign people brought here. But that's just another example for you of what we would call a red light district. A brothel would be a red light district. So let's see. There are hundreds of those websites. Any other questions? How can people help? Well, number one, you made the first step, and that's to educate yourself. That is to hear a real story, see it maybe at the theater, care about it. And then my passion is to create a banquet of ways for people to get involved, not just pray and give money. Those are two really important things. But I wanted to give, when I founded Women at Risk, I wanted to give people 38 ways, I think they're on our website, that they can get involved from the sanctity of their home. Not all of us are called to start a safe house, but we're all called to be a safe place to those we love. And the good news, the bad news is we have a problem. The good news is there's really hope. when you've been at it as long as we have, you have decades to look back and you can see generational change. You can see, 3 generations all headed in a different direction. And that's what keeps me going. It's wonderful to rescue one and see them put their life back together. For example, the lady I rescued and was involved with from the Red Light District here in Grand Rapids. But it really floats my boat to see that her kids will never know that life, right? And generational change. So that, you see 3 generations all headed in a different direction and putting their lives back together. And just, we rescued a woman who was trafficked here from Australia. And today she's running a school, and those are wonderful stories. And there's thousands of them. And we always hear the bad endings. We don't hear the happy endings. And there are so many happy endings. And rescue and aftercare really works. And we've been at it long enough to be eyewitnesses to that and see the proof of that. And so whatever, if you're an artist, if you're a jeweler, if I take pro bono jewelers with me, if you're a volunteer, we have volunteers that do different things. We take people on trips. We take men on trips for our security. We take, there's literally a list of 38 things that you can do. I don't know if it's on our website. I think it is. I know it's in the booklet that we give out at our civilian first responder training. My passion tonight is that you go away determined to be a safe place to those you love. And when we do our training, which we'll be doing on January 13th, we are really trying to give you how to see it, how to respond, how not to respond, and so that you can make a difference in the life of people around you. And it might be a phone call to us because of something you see, or it might be someone that is in your life that needs a safe place. And so aftercare from war, okay, we help start safe houses and programs around the world where we've done research in 80 countries, and we have programs in over 55 countries, including the United States of America. You cannot rescue a woman, pat her on her head, say, nasty life you had there, go do something nice. You have to give her a way to support herself, or she's just going to get re-scammed. And so we either, if they're children, we have them in school. We just rescued a girl called Carolina, who was literally by her family sold in Central America, put in a pig pen cage and put in a barrel with a lid on it to keep her captive. And we found out about her not through the police. Sometimes we get kids in a police raid, but through other kids in the neighborhood who knew what was happening and told us. And so we were able to intervene in her life. And she's now at the safe house. She's going to school. She's only 10. And she said, I love it here. Nobody sells me. So if they're children, they're going to school. We've graduated doctors and lawyers and school teachers and goat herders and mommies and cosmetologists and seamstresses and bakers and candlestick makers and engineers. La came to us when he was 4. His mother brought him to us. She was a trafficked, prostituted child, actually a minor, and couldn't hide him anymore in the pedophile red light district in Thailand. And so he was raised in one of our partner safe houses and graduated with an engineering degree 2-3 years ago, and is raising his siblings now, who will never know the horror that his mother's known, and he won't either. So those are some of the aftercare. And you can go on our website, warinternational.org, and look at programs and see some of the other ways that we do that. And definitely, Amy's written in here that you should ask trusted friends to pray with you about how to get involved. People who know you well and know what your gifts and talents are. And we also have a volunteer application form that kind of helps us navigate what some of your interests are, so that you can, we can help plug you in if you want to be involved with war, but you can be involved with other organizations as well. Like I said, I'm thankful for every organization that's fighting this, because at the end of the day, we just have to throw all the mud at the wall and hope something sticks. Because this is our future. This is a carnage of the innocent. These are our babies we're talking about in the land of the free. We have a bigger problem domestically inside America than we have internationally. And so we're very involved internationally, but we also need to be involved domestically. And America in the West is about 20 years behind the international world, where we've been dealing with trafficking, you know, a couple decades before America caught on to this. And so we are kind of behind the 8 ball here. Yes, we do have pamphlets. Gretchen, if you would send your address to Amy, you can send it in a private chat if you don't want it on that one. And then she can see that you get the pamphlet. There's several pamphlets on how to get involved. And I am going to be in Phoenix in January. I speak at, I can't remember what it's called. Amy will know. Let's see if I can look it up here real quickly. I'm in January. I think it's the 29th for some reason. I'm speaking at a women's event.
Yeah, it's the end of month, the 26th and the 27th, you're in Mesa, Arizona.
Oh, isn't Mesa right outside of Phoenix?
I think it's close as the crows
I think I
fly.
fly into Phoenix. But there's a women's conference there. It's called Breakaway on that Saturday, the 27th. And there will be a war product there made by survivors.
And if
as
anybody
well.
needs any brochures, email
Yes.
info@warinternational.org and we can help you with those requests.
Yeah, that's another good idea. info@warinternational.org and ask for anything you want. We can send you a portfolio with a bunch of all kinds of stuff, like different ways to get involved. Like if in a faith-based setting, there's how to create a prayer circle. If you're, secular settings, we train in both. I'm licensed in all 50 states to train medical professionals, social work, law enforcement. And so there's just a lot of different ways to plug you in. It's such a broad subject, and it's a 1,000-piece puzzle, frankly. And if any one piece is missing, it's not complete. And so really, at the end of the day, if there was an hour I had with each one of you, I could write a job description for each one of you with your background and your, loves and passions and gifts and talents to get involved, because we really have to do it all. It's kind of like raising children. When you had a kid, you didn't know you'd have to do everything. And when you rescue a person, child or adult, they need 18 different things. And they can't go in 18 different directions when they're curled up in a fetal position, sucking their thumb. So you have to bring that to them. Yes, they always have jewelry at that event. And so that's the next time I'll be in Phoenix that I'm aware of off the top of my head.